Hi everyone, it's Liz, the Frugal Libertarian, and I am here with a video about something that's been irking me in the last couple of weeks. Ever since the House of Representatives voted and passed a repeal and reform of the Affordable Care Act, a lot of the liberals I know have been losing their minds about it. And I wanted to talk about one specific facet of the insanity that has been repeated over and over again to me, which is that healthcare is a human right. And my argument back is always, no, healthcare is a service. And the Affordable Care Act doesn't guarantee you're going to get any care. It forces you to purchase insurance. And the problem I'm finding with this is people don't seem to understand the difference between a right and a service. They assume a need is a right. And needs are not rights. Rights are intangible actions you can personally undertake. You're not required to undertake them, and you can't be forced not to undertake them. When you have your intangible action that is a right, you acting upon it does not violate anyone else's rights. However, converting a service to a right means that at some point somebody's going to have to be forced to do something against their will, which means it does violate the rights of others. You have the right to work. You have the right to labor at something. You do not have the right to a job. Nobody has to give you a job. Nobody can say to you, you can't work. The right to work is an intangible action you have to personally undertake, which again does not remove the rights of anyone else. Being forced to be given a job or forced to keep a job against the employer's will, against the person offering the job's will, is a violation of their rights. And therefore, not a right. You don't have the right to a specific job. You also have the right to own a gun, meaning you can actionably go out and purchase and own a gun. But you do not have the right to demand that the government furnish you with a gun. You have to make the choice to act upon the action of your right to gain a gun. You cannot just sit there and say, give me a gun. That's not a right. Your freedom of speech, freedom of religion, do not violate anyone else's rights. You're not sitting there saying to the government, shut that person up so I can talk. You're not saying to the government, hey, I need you to build me a church so I can practice my religion. You're allowed to speak and not be silenced. You're allowed to practice your faith and not be stopped. But again, both of those things are intangible actions. You have the right to own property, but you don't have the right to stand there and say to the government, give me that person's land, because I need property. You have the right to sit down and negotiate with someone and purchase land. You have the right to inherit land. You do not have the right to say, gimme someone else's land. So your ability to own property is, again, an action you are undertaking to receive something tangible, but the action itself is intangible. When you look at the Bill of Rights, these are intangible actions. They're not, gimme this thing. And it's all stuff you have to undertake yourself to enjoy, to exercise. It's not the same thing as a service. So what is a service? A service is you entering into a voluntary contract with a person over here saying, hey, whatever it is you can do for me, I'd like it. So I'll give you X and you give me your labor or your talent or whatever else it is that you're being contracted for. And they say, oh, you'll give me that? I agree to that. Boom, contract, and you've gotten a service. I teach violin lessons a few times a week. Now, there is no government entity saying every child has the right to a lesson And they're not standing there demanding that I do this for these families and teach these people music. Because I'm providing them a service, they want the service, they come to me, give me the money, and I give them the service. If they don't like me, if they don't think I'm providing a good enough service, they don't come here anymore. And likewise, if they don't feel like they need the service anymore, they don't come here anymore. We spend almost our entire lives contracting to other people to get services. If you have somebody come to clean your house, they're providing you with a service. They're providing you with their time and their skill in exchange for whatever you're willing to compensate them with, which is usually money. There is such a thing as bartering for goods and services. So you could be saying, for example, I have a student whose mother cuts my hair, and in exchange for that, they get lessons. It's a barter, but we're both providing a service and getting something in return for providing it. Every time you have food made for you and served to you in a restaurant, you're having multiple services all in one place. Your cable, your TV, your internet, your telephone service, whether you have a landline or a cell phone, whatever device you happen to be watching me on, you contracted privately with a company to receive those services. And in exchange, because you pay them, they give you that service. There are some things that are needs that the government does provide for people. However, the government provides them less efficiently and much more expensively than the private sector does. For example, the food stamp program is a giant bureaucracy requiring millions of dollars just in pure implementation costs and bureaucratic paperwork and oversight and all of that just to get it to the people. Now, if you look at a charity food bank, you'll see that they get the job done of getting food to people who need it, but they don't spend as much money as the government does doing the same job. Same thing with something like Meals on Wheels, which everybody was flipping out about because they were saying, oh my God, they're losing their funding. Well, it was only like 2% of their funding or something like that. And then when people heard they were going to get their funding taken away, their government funding taken away, a bunch of people donated money and donated more than they would have gotten from tax money. They say that people who live in countries with huge numbers of social programs and government redistribution donate less to charity because they see it as my taxes are already paying for the things the charity would be paying for. So they don't personally donate to charities. And that's kind of sad because, again, charities usually provide services and needs to people better. They're just better at doing it. And they do it for far less money because they actually have a limited budget. The government can just throw money around as much as it wants. A charity can only spend what people donate. So they're able to take that money and utilize it to create more with it, instead of creating more jobs with it in terms of bureaucratic red tape that has to be met before any good or service can turn over to the hands of the person that needs it. There are so many things that you need to survive. You need food, water, shelter, clothing, some form of heat or cooling depending on the temperature. You know, we now rely on things like plumbing and electricity and other services that you need to survive. But the reality is, again, some of them government does provide, but they don't do it well or cost effectively. And most of it doesn't. Nobody would sit here and say, everybody needs clothing to survive, so what we should do is have everybody be taxed a set amount, and then everyone is issued clothing coupons, and you can get this many pairs of shoes with one, and this many shirts, and this many pairs of pants, and then everybody will be clothed. Nobody would do that because that sounds insane. That's exactly what they did in Russia. And it didn't go well. The only time a service is provided by the government is when the government is going to be taking away your rights and therefore has to give you something so that you can fight the removal from them. When they're going to do something to you, they have to provide you with a service back to allow you to prove that they shouldn't be removing your rights. And specifically, I'm talking about trial by jury and the right to representation. Different there, even in that situation, is that the lawyers working as public defenders are not forced to be there. They do it because they want to do it, and it's something that they feel passionately about. Unfortunately for them, they're underfunded and overutilized, and so it's not the greatest system in the world. Nobody looks at a private practice attorney and says, you've got to go represent that person, because they're going to say, no. And again, that's the difference here. Government has to provide you with a service, but the people providing that service are doing so contractually, voluntarily to the government. They're privately contracting with the government. They're saying to the government, hey, you pay me X and I'll do that job. Technically, you don't have a choice with whether or not you're in a jury, unless you're somebody like me who can't sit for prolonged periods of time without extreme amount of pain and a lot of medication, at which point I'm no longer a functioning juror. So I am actually exempt from jury duty. However, most people aren't, and it's something that's just assumed to be part of what us as citizens do. I actually personally, and it's kind of sad that I'm ineligible for jury duty, because I always thought it'd be really fun, because the libertarian in me who believes in jury nullification is sitting there like, please give me something where I could defend somebody's rights, you know? I want to be the person on the jury going, nope. I do not vote to do X. No, I don't. You know, I want to be that person. And I can't be, and it's kind of sad to me. But that's the point, is that the government, if the government is going to damage you in any way, they have to prove that there's a reason they're doing it. And in order to prove it, you have to be able to be defended. You have to be able to have your charges read against you. You have to be able to have your peers sitting there looking at you and looking at the evidence and going, you know what, we agree with you or we agree with the government. There's a process. I have heard people say things like, it would be so much faster and cheaper if we got rid of the jury process and just let judges do what they want. Or, why do we need a trial anyway? We all know somebody's guilty, so let's just throw them in prison or just execute them and be done with it. And it's very scary to me when people say that kind of stuff, because you want to talk about a service that is a human right? A trial by jury is pretty much that. These rights I'm talking about, which are real rights, again, intangible actions you can undertake. They come to us by nature of your birth. By being born, you get them. It's not something the government gives you. It's not something that other people give you. If you believe in God, it comes from God. If you do not, then it comes from nature, meaning the second you are born, those rights are immediately in place. And the idea that a service can turn into that doesn't make sense. And you're born with the ability to exercise rights when you're able to. And that's why you have parents or guardians who watch over your rights until you're old enough to watch over them yourself. So why is it that people, especially right now, are insisting that services are rights? I came up with a couple of different reasons why. Because I have pointed out these specifics to people over and over again, and the same people keep coming back to me. And I have been called many, many, many nasty names. Nasty names. Because I have sat there and said, excuse me, healthcare is not a basic human right. The right to your life is a basic human right. The right to travel freely, unmolested, is a basic human right. A doctor being forced to take care of you when you say you have your throat hurts, that's not a basic human right. That's a service you're asking somebody to give you. That's not a right. So why is it that people still sit there and will fight you and tooth and nail and say, it's something everyone needs because they need it to survive? When I was thinking about this, I came up with a couple of ideas. The first one is pure greed. Why should I spend my money when there are people with a lot more money out there than I have, and they're not spending it on anything as important as healthcare. So what right do they have to do that? Why aren't they paying for me if they've got all that money? Well, because they have that money. It's theirs. It belongs to them. It's part of their property. You don't have a right to another person's property just because you want it. But that's the greed talking. That's the green-eyed jealousy monster coming out. Along with greed comes selfishness. So you have people saying, I don't care how many are harmed under universal health care, okay? I don't care about the people who die waiting for procedures or treatments. I don't care about the people whose sicknesses get worse because they can't get into a doctor. I don't care about the rationing. I don't care about the people who are denied care because it isn't to be found. I don't care about the people who lose their doctors. I don't care about any of that because I get a benefit out of it, okay? And that is nothing but selfishness. If you can look at someone and say, I've said this so many times, and I've said it to people, directly to people. If your answer is, well, I'm going to be better off because of it, and I don't care who has to be stomped for me to get what I want, you've lost your moral high ground you claim to have. And then I think there are people who want services to be rights out of pure ignorance. They've never sat down and thought about what a right is. They've never read the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. They've never discussed it with anybody. They just hear somebody on TV saying, you deserve X. And they sit there and say, oh, I deserve it because this person said I did. Or they have the ignorant belief that, in this case, healthcare will be so much better when everybody is being paid for by the government, when people are being taxed in exchange for it. They'll say to you, no country in the world that has universal healthcare has ever gone away from that system. They've implemented it and none of them have left it. They're not saying that because it's true. They're saying it because they've never bothered to look. Someone like Bernie Sanders said it and they just repeated it, and it's not true. Sweden went away from universal health care. They just don't know because somebody says it and it sounds good, so they repeat it and they repeat it and they repeat it. And no matter what you do, you're not going to get through to them. The argument of what is a right versus what is a service, what is a privilege, those are different terms and they are not interchangeable. A right comes to you at birth, it is intangible, and it is something you have to take an action upon yourself to benefit from. A privilege is something someone else is allowing you to do. For example, driving on public roads is a privilege the government extends to you. That is a case where it is being done so to protect other people from your negligence. So the government is demanding you meet a certain standard before you're given the privilege to drive. Now, if you were driving on, say, a private road or driving around on your own property, you don't need a license, you don't need registration, you don't need insurance. You can drive, if you have a 1,000-acre ranch, you can drive all up and down it all day long and the government can't do anything about it. But the minute you turn onto a public road, then the government can demand it because that becomes a privilege. And a service is a contract between two people, one person paying and the other person providing. And it is for a tangible item, either a physical service being provided or a good being provided. And that, in the end, is the true difference. If there's anything in this video that you find confusing or you don't think is very clear or you'd like to hear more about, please leave it down in the comments or you can send me an email. My email address is always down in the description boxes underneath my videos, so feel free to contact me individually. And I will be back with more videos. I hope this was a little educational if you were not already aware of these differences. Thank you very much for watching this video. I really appreciate it, and I will talk to you soon. Have an awesome day. Bye.